Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. Today we are test driving the 2022 Lexus LX600 Ultra Lux, the biggest, most expensive, most luxurious SUV you can get from the brand. And it's all new this year, so we're going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a drive out here in the desert, and then I'm going to tell you what I really think. So let's talk about what we're test driving today. This is all new for 2022, completely redesigned from the ground up. And as I stated, this is the Ultra Lux trim grade, top of the line. For 2022, the LX600 starts out at around $88,000 base price. And as tested with the Ultra Lux, we're at $128,000 and some change, about a $40,000 difference from low to high. And we'll get into really where a lot of that money's at inside here in just a minute. But look at the styling, all new for 2022. All new platform architecture, all new body structure. It weighs about 441 pounds less than before, and that's because we're using a lot more aluminum in the body panels and structure, particularly the doors now made of aluminum, yet they still feel pretty heavy when you get in and out of it. But looking at the styling, there is no denying that this is a Lexus, the big snowplow grille, some people would call it. Very elegant, and looking at the hood, you can see a bit of a valley sculpted down in the center, something you definitely notice when you're driving down the road from behind the wheel. It's got a nice look and feel. That design actually gives you a little bit more visibility when you're off-road to see where your perimeter is. I do like that. The headlights on this, of course, LED. Down below, fog lights. And coming around the corner, this has 22-inch wheels on the Ultra Lux trim grade. Now there's lots of different trim grades you can get, but I will point out that these wheels are really one of the only differentiating visual factors that you get when you step up to this top trim grade for $40,000, at least on the exterior. Coming down the side, this does have running boards that are nice and grippy on my boots. And look at this rear three-quarter view and the roof line. This is something that's a little bit more ornate than we had before, a more artistic window line at that rear three-quarter view on the side. And coming around to the back, this is a power liftgate, and LED taillights span the entire width for a more horizontal look. And they light up rather nicely at night. Coming down underneath that rear bumper, you'll see that this does have a full-size spare mounted underneath. The interior of the LX600 Ultra Lux is really where I think you're going to find most of the money for this trim grade spent. Looking around, there are soft trims literally everywhere you touched, and the seats, the door panels, and the center console all have this beautiful stitching, accent stitching. This is semi-aniline leather on these seats. They're both heated and ventilated. This is a very comfortable place to be. These seats feel expensive with all of their comfort features. I found that I can sit in these things all day long and not only find a comfortable spot, but keep it and not be wanting to get out of these seats. Steering wheel, of course, leather covered. Ahead of me is a fully digital instrument cluster. The center stack basically has two screens, the infotainment system at the top, and then another screen in the center stack that allows you to control HVAC. It has the all-terrain monitor and a number of other things, as well as settings. Below that, hard controls for almost everything else and all of the drive modes and four-wheel drive control systems. Lots of versatility here. A big cubby down below, and there is a wireless charger here, traditional shifter, and center console storage here in this particular box. Not a lot, it's very deep, it's sort of a small hole, but you've got the cool box feature, which allows you to keep things cold in there. Did I not tell you this is where the money's at? I mean, look at this. You've got 4-place seating in the back instead of the 3-row setup with 3 and then 2, or the captain's chairs. Here you've got a dedicated 2 captain's chairs and center console with all of the trimmings, and this is really designed for chauffeuring somebody around. As you can see, the passenger seat goes all the way forward. There's a fold-out ottoman, and this seat fully reclines, and these seats are fully featured for comfort. They have heating, they have cooling, they have massage functions. They're very comfortable, and as you can see, I'm able to spread out and really be treated like a king here. There is a full control panel at the center console that allows you to completely control these seats. Additionally, there's controls for all of the HVAC. If that weren't enough, you've got the dual entertainment system back here, and there's just a number of different ways to get content to these entertainment screens. At the very least, you can control what's on the vehicle's audio system from back here. Kind of a nice touch. And of course, the amenities include lots of air vents up here in the ceiling. Down on the center console, there is another wireless charger here at the rear row. As you can imagine, these seats do not fold flat and give you a large cargo floor like you would have in the other versions of this vehicle. There is a sizable cargo space there in the back, as you can see, however, and even with these seats being here like this, you're not completely without the SUV capability. When it comes to rating this interior, as I said, this is where the money is spent. Very nicely done, high quality, as you'd expect with Lexus. The switchgear, the controls, the soft touch materials, everything in here speaks to the price tag. This interior gets 5 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system here is the top of the line Mark Levinson audio system with a large 12.3-inch display. It is fully featured with all of the content that you'd expect at this price. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, that's wireless, Sirius XM, Bluetooth connectivity of all kinds, FM, AM of course, and then HD radio. It has a 360-degree camera system that works exceptionally well backing up, as well as off-road for forward views. And the audio quality from its 25 speakers is absolutely phenomenal. Mark Levinson almost always is. I'll keep it short. This is easy to use. The menus, the graphics, everything here is top notch. This infotainment system gets 5 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, let's take a drive. And if you watch my videos, you know the very first question I always like to ask is, how does it go? So we're out here in the middle of nowhere, complete stop, and go. Nice sound. And 60. So this actually works pretty good. It's got a nice sound and it moves pretty good. For this year, all new under the hood is a 3.4-liter twin turbocharged V6. It's got 409 horsepower, 479 pound-feet of torque, and it comes mated to a 10-speed automatic transmission with full-time four-wheel drive. Now wait, you're going, wait a minute. I thought it had a 3.5-liter engine, Sam. You're wrong. Well, here's the deal. They're calling it a 3.5-liter engine, but if you look at the specs and actually read the displacement, they're rounding up a little bit optimistically. It's actually 3.4 liters technically, but they're calling it a 3.5 because, well, that's what they've always had, a 3.5 liter V6. But the thing to point out is that this is a different V6 engine than the old 3.5. The bore and the stroke is different. And again, if you look at the measurements and you're honest, it's a 3.4 liter engine, not a 3.5. But I digress. You're not going to notice that extra tenth of a liter. This works rather well. This transmission has paddle shifters on the steering wheel, and there's drive modes here that give you different personalities to this powertrain, whether you're on the pavement or off. And so when you dial these things from comfort to eco, all the way up to sport and sport plus, this has a different level of response and a different level of feel. And so it's a nice engine in terms of power. It's got a lot of torque. When you mash the pedal, it gives you all the power you ever would have expected from the V8. So we're not missing the V8 in that respect. Now I will say that while it does have a good sound, it tends to be a little bit more of a coarse sounding and feeling engine under your foot than the old refined V8. It's a smaller engine, it's working hard. The EPA rating here is 17 city, 22 highway, and 19 mpg combined. In my week with it though, air conditioning on, I got about 15 miles to the gallon combined. So not quite meeting what the EPA estimates are, but in fairness, air conditioning on almost exclusively. This is a powertrain that does have more power. If you use it with the turbos, you're going to probably drink more fuel than you might have with a V8. But this has excellent towing capability and excellent all-around driving every day. And there's no noticeable turbo lag when you're driving in traffic or at slow speeds like off-road, which we'll do here in just a minute. This powertrain gets 4 out of 5 stars. Now when it comes to ride, drive, and handling, this is luxury, right? This is a body-on-frame SUV, not very many of those around anymore, and this still has a traditional solid axle at the rear, a 4-link suspension, but bringing it all up to date is a double wishbone front suspension, and all around we've got an adjustable suspension. It's adjustable in spring rate because of its hydraulic springs and steel spring combination. It has adaptive dampers, so the damping and the stiffness of the suspension is constantly adjustable depending on your drive mode. Looking down here to my mode select button on the center console, if I change up these drive modes, I'm going to get a different feel. On comfort, this has a very cushy, boaty sort of rock around ride that's traditional for the Land Cruiser and the LX series. But if you dial it up to sport, it stiffens up and becomes a little bit more of a European feel. So you can really put it the way you want it. You can also adjust the height, although for most street driving, the normal setting is best. So around town, very comfortable. It has a very soft, cushy sort of, almost like a Mercedes-Benz in the way it lets this thing have some body motion, but not so much that it feels sloppy. So they've done a nice job here. Now on our 70-mile-an-hour cruise on the freeway, very quiet. This has one of the quietest numbers we've seen as far as decibels, 57.3 decibels at 70 miles an hour on the freeway. That is well below average, very quiet and hushed. And really the loudest noise that you can hear is tire slap on expansion joints. But my guess is that most of you aren't watching this video to hear about how quiet this rides at speed on the freeway. Let's take it off-road. Okay, so this is really what I've been waiting to do here for you, because out here in the dirt is really, for me, where this vehicle is most impressive, and it always has been. We talked about the drive modes on the pavement. Now this has a set of drive modes for off the pavement. I reach down here and hit the multi-terrain select button, and then I go back to my mode select knob, and I see a different selection of modes here, and these are all tied to the traction toys. These are tied to things like the suspension and the adjustment. The first thing I can tell you about how this rides and drives out here in the rough is that it's effortless, it's quiet, it's comfortable. This is an extremely compliant suspension, and because it has adaptive dampers, because it's got the hydraulic suspension and the steel springs, it can be very robust yet very compliant. Now I do have the height set for H1, not all the way up to 2, because I don't usually like to drive off-road all the way up unless you absolutely have to, because articulation for me tends to be a little bit more comfortable when it's somewhere in the middle. It's a nice lightweight steering, and this just feels so refined. Like this is nothing for this. We're just rolling around out here like I'm going through a mall parking lot. Now I'm starting to crawl up a little bit of a hill here. Again, I'm in 4 high. There's no reason to go all the way down to 4 low here. It's set on auto with the multi-terrain select. So I'm going to trust the computer to make any adjustments in traction and suspension that it needs. So I'm just crawling slowly up this hill over some of these little mounds, letting it articulate. And it's just very easy. Going up a little bit of a steep incline here, a nice sharp turn. This engine just has a nice level of torque. It just sort of grumbles softly below your foot. And here we are. It's very maneuverable. It's got a shorter wheelbase than the Sequoia, so it's a little bit more maneuverable in these tight spots out here. And it's just effortless. It just makes child's play out of going off-road. There's no white knuckles here. And now that I'm picking up a little bit more speed over some of these rough bumps and ruts, going through a wash here, you notice how quiet it is in here? You maneuver through these curves, up over these rocks. I'm not getting any rattling or shaking in the interior. This thing feels every bit as solid as the previous generation, in spite of the fact that it lost over 400 pounds. And sometimes these things tend to feel a little bit flimsier when they lose their weight. So to recap there on some of the off-roading, this has a multitude of traction toys. So if you're in rocks, sand, mud, water, snow, ice, this has got a setting for just about every possibility. And leaving on auto for me, in this particular instance, is fine because there's nothing super challenging here. But if I were in mud, if I were in sand, I would definitely set it to one of those things so that I know I'm getting what I need. But the last thing we have to do now that we've done the good stuff is take a little bit of a ride on the washboard road, because ultimately at speed, this is where this thing can either really feel like a POS or really feel like it's worth the money. Here we go. And the Desert Washboard Road does that because of this vibrating washboard surface. Can make even the best vehicles vibrate and shake and shudder, and it can cause looseness in the suspension and chassis that you didn't notice other places to really surface. And what I'm finding here, now that I'm up to about 45 miles an hour on this gravel road, this thing rides out here like a magic carpet. Notice how quiet it is, how peaceful this is. And that really is the watchword for this entire driving experience with the suspension. This is one of the best active adjustable suspensions on an off-road vehicle I think I've ever sampled. It controls the ride, it's very refined, it's very stable on the pavement. When you set it to come out here onto the dirt, it's the best personality you could want out here as well. It becomes compliant, it becomes soft, it becomes reassuring, allowing you to really just go and concentrate on getting where you're going, and well, we're in the lap of luxury that feels every bit worth the price. This chassis gets 5 out of 5 stars. Before we finish up here, we've got to talk about value and competition. Frankly, there just are not that many competitors to this vehicle in the luxury segment for body-on-frame SUVs. You could point to the Cadillac Escalade, GMC perhaps, Ford, Lincoln, Chevrolet Tahoe. Those are all a little bit more down market from what we're talking about here. Land Rover, vehicles like that, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, those are not body-on-frame. Those aren't going to be as rugged and capable off-road. This is kind of in a class by itself. We used to be able to say that if you like the Toyota Land Cruiser, this is a nicer one. Now, the Land Cruiser no longer available in the US market. Instead, you can get the Toyota Sequoia, which while it's based on the same chassis and mechanical architecture, not entirely the same thing inside and out. It's just a slightly different animal now than this. It's not just a rebadged, counted down LX600. That said, this is where the money's at. And with this trim grade, it's really here, right? And that's where value comes in for me. It's got good warranty coverage. It's got excellent quality. It's got the Lexus dealership experience. It's got all the things you come to Lexus for. But when I look at $88,000 for the base model and $40,000 more for this one, I have to talk about value in that lens, because I don't necessarily see $40,000 worth of extra value here. So I'm going to put value at 4 out of 5 stars. Maybe if we had a lower trim grade, it might be easy to point to 5, but I should just say, I think, maybe an extra $15,000 or $20,000 for this extra interior and some of the things that this has over the base model might have put this at a 5-star value for me. And I just hate to sound like I'm counting pennies here, but luxury vehicles, these are the challenges, right? So value, 4 out of 5 stars. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 4.5 stars for the review. Excellent. Definitely an excellent choice out there. And if you just don't want something American, you can't go wrong here. So that's it. If you like what we do, please follow us on social media. All of our links are down below. We have a lot of content there that we don't do videos on. You can see our latest video right there. Better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there. Either way, stay tuned.